There was a king in Sweden, Niðhad hight. He had 2 sons and 1 daughter. She hight Betrayal. 3 brothers there were, sons of a Finnish king. Hight one ᚹᚚᚚᚚ᚞ᚢᚉ, another Egil, the third Weyland. They went by snowshoe and hunted animals. They came to Älfdalen and built themselves a house there. There is a lake which hight Älfsea. Early one morning they found at the water's edge 3 women spinning line. There were next to them their swans' hides. They were valkyries. There were 2 daughters of King Hlotver, Hlotguth Swan-White and Hervor All-Wise. The third was ᚹᚖᚚᚚᚚᚚᚚ daughter from Weyland. They brought these women home to their lodging with them. Egil took ᚹᚚᚚ, and ᚹᚚᚚᚚ Swan-White, and Weyland All-Wise. They dwelt there 7 winters. Then the women flew off to look after battles, and came not back again afterward. Then Egil went by snowshoe to lait for ᚹᚚᚚ, and ᚹᚚᚚ laited for Swan-White, but Weyland stayed in Älfdalen. He was a most skillful man, as people know, from the old sagas. King Niðhad had him taken away with his hands bound, as it is here said. Maidens flew from the south through Mirkwood, young All-Wise to dree her forelay. At the seashore sat they down to rest a while, the southern lasses, spinning fine line. One of them Egil took to have and to hold, a maiden fair to men, in his bright embrace. Another was Swan-White, a swan-feathered lass, and the third of these sisters took Weyland's white neck to her embrace. Afterwards they stayed for 7 winters following, but upon the 8th they longed withal, and upon the 9th need split them up. The maidens desired the murky wood, young All-Wise to dree her forelay. Home from hunting came the stormy-eyed marksman. Weyland, approaching by a long and wearisome way, ᚹᚚᚚᚚ and Egil, found the long houses empty. They went in and out and all about looking. Eastward went Egil by snowshoe after ᚹᚚᚚ, and southward ᚹᚚᚚ after Swan-White. Weyland alone stayed in Älfdalen. He forged red gold with gems inlaid. Well he welded arm-rings, all lime-basted. So bode he for his bright and shining queen, if she might come home to him. Niðhad, lord of the Njars, found this out, that Weyland sat alone in Älfdalen. His men fared by night, their mail-coats were studded, their shields gleamed with the waning moon. They stepped down from their saddles at the longhouse's gable, thence went they into the longhouse endwise. They saw arm-rings strung on a bast, 700 in all which the hero had. And they took them off, and they put them back on, but for one which they bore off. Home from hunting came the stormy-eyed marksman, Weyland, approaching by a long and wearisome way. He went to roast the flesh of a brown bear, burned o'er a fire of all dry brushwood, the wind-dry wood, in front of him. He sat on a bear pelt and counted the arm-rings, the elf lad. One, he noticed, was missing. Thought he that Hlotver's daughter might have it, young All-Wise, she might be come back. Sat he so long that he fell asleep, and he awoke joyless. He found himself with hands heavily bound, and with his feet bound up in fetters. Quoth Weyland, "Who are the pigs that have laid on bast cords in order to bind me?" Next called Niðhad, lord of the Njars. "Whence gottest thou, Weyland, chief of elves, our treasures into Älfdalen?" Quoth Weyland, "The gold was not on Grani's way. Methought our land far off from the fells of the Rhine. I mind that we had more riches when we were a hale household at home. Hlothguth and Hervor were born of Hlotver. Well known was ᚹᚚᚚᚚᚚ's daughter. Outside stood Niðhad's cunning wife. She came in from the end of the hall, stood on the floor, and said with a calm voice, "He does not look happy, this one who comes from the woods." King Niðhad gave his daughter Betrayal that gold ring which he took from off the bast at Weyland's, and he himself bore the sword which Weyland had owned. Quoth the queen, "His eyes are like to those of the gleaming serpent. He bares his teeth whenever that sword is shown to him, and he recognizes Betrayal's arm-ring. Cut ye his sinews of strength, and afterwards set him on seastead." So was it done, that the sinews in his knee-pits were shorn, and he was set alone on a holm which there was before the mainland, which hight Seastead. There he smithed for the king all kinds of treasures. No man dared to fare to him save the king alone. Quoth Weyland, "At Niðhad's belt shines the sword, which I whetted, as I most skilfully can, and I hardened, as bethought me most easily. That gleaming meek is borne ever far off from me, nor shall I see it borne to Weyland's smithy. Now Betrayal bears my bride's red gold arm-ring, and this I cannot set right." He sat unsleeping always, and he struck with a hammer, begearing a crafty device for the rather sharp Niðhad. 2 youths were driven to see the dear things on seastead, Niðhad's sons. They came to a chest and craved the key. Ill-boding was the opening when they looked in. There was an abundance of necklaces, which seemed to those boys to have been of red gold and jewels. Quoth Weyland, "Come you two alone, come another day, I will let this gold be given up to you. Tell not the maidens nor the people in the hall, to no man say that you have gone to find me." Early called one young man to the other, brother to brother. "Let's go see the arm rings." They came to a chest and craved the key. Ill-boding was the opening when they looked in. He cut off those young boys' heads and hid their fettered feet under the fen, and their skulls, which were under the scalps, he cast without in silver and handed them over to Niðhad. And out of the eyes he made precious stones and sent them to Niðhad's cunning wife, and out of the teeth of those two he forged brooches sent to Betrayal. Then Betrayal took to boasting about her arm ring, but laid bare to Weyland that she had broken it. "I daren't say it, save to thee alone." Quoth Weyland, "I shall so mend the break in the gold that it will seem fairer to thy father and much better to thy mother, and to thyself that it fits as before." He bore her bier, since he was more cunning, so that she fell asleep in her seat. "Now I have revenge for my harms, for all save one act of wickedness. I wish," said Weyland, "I could become properly strung, for that is what Niðhad's warriors took from me." Laughing, Weyland was hoven aloft. Weeping Betrayal went from the holm, grieving her lover's flight and her father's wrath. Outside stood Niðhad's cunning wife, and she came in from the end of the hall. And Weyland set a spell on the longhouse wall. "Art thou awake, Niðhad, lord of the Njars?" Quoth Niðhad, "I am always awake, joyless. I sleep very little since my sons died. I am cold in the head. Thy counsel has been cold to me. Just one thing now I wish, that I may confer with Weyland. Tell me this, Weyland, chief of elves, of what became of my hale young boys?" Quoth Weyland, "First shalt thou swear to me all the oaths, by a ship's board and by a shield's rim, by a horse's shoulder and by a meek's edge, that thou shalt not hurt Weyland's wife, nor bring my bride to death, even if I should have a wife whom you well know, or should have a baby within this hall. Go thou to the smithy which thou builtest. There wilt thou find the bellows sprinkled with blood. I cut the heads off thy young boys, and hid their fettered feet under the fen. And their skulls, which were under the scalps, I cast without in silver, and handed them over to Niðhad. And out of the eyes I made precious stones, and sent them to Niðhad's cunning wife. And out of the teeth of those two I forged brooches, which I sent to Betrayal. Now Betrayal walks around pregnant with a child, the only daughter of you both." Quoth Niðhad, "Spokest thou not any word which were more sorrowful to me, nor which I wanted, Weyland, more sorely to deny? There is no man so high that he could take thee from off thy horse, nor so strong of hand as to shoot thee from beneath, as thou hangest up there with the clouds." Laughing, Weyland was hoven aloft, and unhappy Niðhad sat there left behind. Quoth Niðhad, "Rise thou up, Thackrath, the best of my thralls. Bid thou Betrayal, the white-browed maiden, to come fair-dressed to have a word with her father. Is it sooth, Betrayal, that which was told me? Thou and Weyland lay together on the holm?" Quoth Betrayal, "Sooth it is, Niðhad, that which was told thee. Weyland and I lay together on the holm for one brief moment, which should never have been. I could do naught to beat him, I might do naught to prevail over him.